It has been a year now since we released our theory on the connected cartoon universe. This has been easily our most viewed and liked video on our channel, and you have my honest, heartfelt thanks for that. It is seriously amazing and humbling to see a video do so well for our channel. And we've also gotten so many requests that we update this theory with the newest observations and news coming out of Disney and its shows Amphibia and the Owl House, which just goes to further show how big and beloved this idea is among many fans. And I am happy to report in this video that we have confirmation that Gravity Falls, the Owl House, and Amphibia are all indeed connected. Huzzah! Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And I would have gotten to this video a whole lot sooner, but my scheduling turned wonky and weird for a variety of reasons. However, that ended up being a blessing from the axolotl because recent evidences from Matt Brawley, Alex Hirsch, and Disney have given us greater insights into the potential for Disney's connected cartoon universe, both story-wise and in terms of things going on behind the scenes in Disney's television studios. There is a ton to talk about. So to prevent this video from devolving into a sloppy rant, I am going to organize everything in the following order. First, I am going to go over the evidence that we have that solidly confirms the connected cartoon universe, and that it could go from being a confirmed theory to a fully animated feature, or better yet, a series. Secondly, I will discuss why any of this even matters, especially since I got plenty of comments on our previous video that there's a whole lot of fans who don't want this to happen, and I do want to address that. Third, I will throw out what stories are on the table to be told in this new connected cartoon universe. Fourth, and very crucially, I will go over the actual realistic chances of this crossover event even happening. And lastly, because we are a channel for novice writers, I will go over what lessons can be learned from all of this. And please, I beg you to stick around for the whole video. Not only is there a ton of important information to cover, we are going to do our part here on this channel and across the internet to get this crossover special off the ground. And in order to get that happen, we need everyone's help to make that happen. So again, please stick around to learn how you can help this crossover event come into being and really help us out by liking, commenting on, and sharing this video all over the internet. And maybe even consider subscribing to Camille's Harem as well. Alright, enough preamble, let's get on to the good stuff. When I first speculated on the connected cartoon universe, much of what I said was theoretical, pulling on strings that I saw interconnecting across multiple shows. There is so much nebulous evidence that supports the reality of a connection between all of Disney's numerous cartoons and even other shows out there. There is a canon narrative, world-building mechanics across multiple cartoons that all come together to justify a massive crossover between multiple shows. And I won't rehash everything that I've covered before. If you want to see that, please go check out our first theory video. What I will go over here, however, is the undeniable evidence that a crossover can happen between Gravity Falls, the Owl House, and Amphibia. There are multiple references, first of all, to the Owl House in Gravity Falls, which is a show that already wrapped up years ago. We not only know that Stan and Ida were married for 48 hours before Ida left him, stealing all of his goods and cash, but she was also in the crawl space, the crazy magical market town hidden in a pocket dimension accessible through Gravity Falls. Ford Pines had even discovered stuff about the Boiling Isles that we see written in Journal 1. However, we don't exactly know how he learned about those things. And then in Amphibia, in its episode Wax Museum in Season 2, we learn that there is a Seuss in every dimension, and that there is a Pines family on every world. This supports what Ford learned while wandering through the multiverse, that many dimensions and worlds have similar storylines to that of his families, but that they don't exactly run parallel, meaning that they can turn out in any different kind of way. Furthermore, a very mysterious and suspect book written by a Dr. P has information all about Bill Cipher and other means of world hopping, including the Calamity Box. We also know from Alex Hirsch that every place that has a Bill icon allows Bill Cipher to peer into that vicinity and even interfere with that place, its world, and its many stories. So, Gravity Falls is clearly connected to the Owl House and Amphibia. Furthermore, in the Amphibia episode, If You Give a Frog a Cookie, Anne and the Planters are trying to get back to Amphibia. There they go to meet this kooky crackpot scientist, Dr. Frakes, who has a portal through which she has glimpsed the Owl House itself, confirming a connection to the Boiling Isles. Her more brilliant and grounded assistant, Terry, figures that the Calamity Box is also able to connect to other worlds by using musical notes to connect its portal powers with exact coordinates. If only Bill could have gotten his hands on this useful box. Though it might not have worked all too well because the Nightmare Dimension was his prison, quarantining him from the rest of the multiverse. This is then what required his exact portal specifications to link Gravity Falls to the Nightmare Dimension. But the real kicker is in the Owl House, where we do see a lot of Easter eggs connecting to multiple shows. But in the last episode of Season 2, King's Tide, we get a glimpse of an online article talking about Anne returning to Earth after disappearing for months to a world of frogs. Boom! Everything else, and I mean, there is a lot of stuff out there, a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of connections. Everything else now is just icing on the cake. All three shows are directly linked to each other. Not only that, but all the main human characters come from the same Earth. This matters because even though portals and magic could be used to link separate dimensions and universes, there is a very real and believable chance now for Dipper, Mabel, Stan, Ford, Seuss, Wendy, Anne, Sasha, Marcy, and Luz to all meet up. So even if the Owl House ends with Luz cut off from the Boiling Isles, all that's needed then is for these people on Earth to get together and they can discover a way back to the Boiling Isles for Luz. A good happy ending. But yeah, we have a ton of great interconnecting information now, world building and details that absolutely 110% cement the canon possibilities of an epic cartoon crossover between three of Disney's most beloved cartoons in recent history. Now, we might as well ask ourselves, because this is a sticking point among many fans, why have a crossover? Gravity Falls has been over for years. Dana Terrance said that the Owl House is very much its own story, and Amphibia had a very solid, amazing ending, suggesting that the next time that Anne encounters any kind of magic is when the three-stone deity collects her soul after she dies. So why add to these three masterpieces and potentially ruin everything? Well, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, Alex Hirsch, Dana Terrance, and Matt Brawley are all friends with stories to tell. And like all friends who tell stories, the inevitable question has been asked. What if we cross the streams and our stories merge together at some point? And in fact, we've actually already seen that happen. Thrice! The first was when Alex totally put Edel Clawthorne blatantly into the lore of Gravity Falls. The second was when Matt Brawley had an entire episode dedicated to Gravity Falls, playing out in Amphibia, and it was complemented totally by Gravity Falls lore. And for the third incident, Matt and Dana oversaw a world-building appropriate crossover at Comic-Con where Luz and Anne meet, and it was one of the best received and most watched panels that year. Matt in particular has been adamant about getting this crossover going, and as he wrapped up Amphibia, he said this in an interview.
One last thing for all the fans out there. I know we did one at kind of Comic-Con. Will there ever be a mashup between Amphibia and the Owl House?
So never say never. I think that it's absolutely possible. I do think though that it's like, we didn't really want to cross over now because
absolutely
we
not.
want you. Yeah,
sorry. As a fan of the show, both shows,
totally,
absolutely not.
I loved like that table read we did. It was so much fun, and like the characters had really good chemistry.
I was very anti that until I saw the table read, and I said, okay, but not while this is happening.
Here's what we should do, and like again, for the record, all speculation. Nothing is getting made. Don't ever like imply like nothing. There's nothing like this. But like my dream would be to do like a 3-way crossover with Gravity Falls, Amphibia, and the Owl House. But like do it like crazy, like huge budget, hour and a half, like just bananas animation. You know what I mean? Just like really make it. But you have to do it in a couple years. Like you got to let the shows.
You got to let it go. Yeah.
Finish. But I think
I'd be
like,
down for that.
We would love. I'm sure we would love to like do something. It's just a question of like when and who and how and that.
As we can plainly see, these amazing friends and storytellers have been crossing their tails streams. And Matt really wants to take this all the way. It would be amazing to have these three reunite to tell a complete story that continues to build on what they've already established. Their stories absolutely complement each other, and they have all dropped plenty of hints that there is far more that they wish to share with us. But we should also take into account the fact that the Disney Corporation owns all of these stories. Alex, Dana, and Matt sold their stories to Disney, to the House of Mouse, with stipulations in their contracts giving them all the leads of their respective stories so long as they were being made. Since Disney owns these stories, as they wrap up and the contracts are fulfilled, Disney can now do with them whatever they want. Well, Disney is in need of cash. And that's very important to emphasize right here. Disney is in need of cash. I know, it sounds ridiculous, but it is true. The House of Mouse is bleeding funds and viable sources for income. And an untapped source of incredible wealth is their television shows. If they were to properly monetize and merchandise Gravity Falls, The Owl House, and Amphibia, they would make a killing. But since 2 of the 3 shows have already wrapped, they need a reason to continue to boost them. Furthermore, they need an assurance that such an investment in time and money would be worth it when Mickey and pals have fallen on hard times like they have recently. And I'll get to that in a moment. But let's first address how these stories can be continued when Gravity Falls and Amphibia have concluded and Disney has just ridiculously slashed the Owl House's final season to a series of specials. It seems like maybe this won't happen, but not only does Disney need cash, there are still plenty of story ideas that can justify a complete merger and bring the creators all together for an epic crossover event. So this is where things get really fun, and there's so much potential to all of these stories. And even as they wrap, I want to emphasize that there are a ton of things that can still be explored, developed, and expanded, and even new characters and events and world building can be introduced that would inspire fresh stories and that would brilliantly build up and continue the stories to Amphibia, the Owl House, and especially Gravity Falls. There are a ton of different ideas, and I could probably spend an hour going over all of the different potential ideas for a crossover and their benefits, but I'm just going to kind of give a rapid-fire response to some ideas that might really bring all of these shows together in a fun and fulfilling way. So, story idea number 1, the return of Bill Cipher, a fan favorite and given his presence in all 3 shows, and the magic he called upon to save himself at the finale of Weirdmageddon, he definitely is coming back at some point, and you can shape an entire epic around that, and one that would bring all kinds of deities and OP beings from all across the worlds into conflict. The Axolotl, the Collector, maybe even we could finally see the Great Frog from Amphibia. Who knows? There's so much that we could bring in. Number 2, remember that weirdness causes Earth to go wacky. And unless it's contained within Gravity Falls, well, Earth would probably just start falling apart. So, given the events within the Owl House and Amphibia, the way that these shows have been wrapping up, there's now a lot of crazy weirdness that has been spilled onto Gravity Falls' Earth, which means that the Pines need to get called out of wherever it is that they're at to deal with all of the weirdness and repercussions, wrap things up, and try to save Earth from just unraveling into chaos. Another story idea that we could go with right here is the revealed continent on the backside of Amphibia. There is just so much that we can explore right here, and Matt Brawley definitely wants to get into all different kinds of stories regarding this continent and the crazy magics and mysteries and whatnot else that could be discovered over there, and potentially even means to once again reach back on over to Earth to Anne, which would unleash all different kinds of possibilities. A fourth and final idea that I will give here is, well, what if the characters from all three shows went to their own variations of the Bizarre Bazaar and ended up in the crawl space? The crawl space, as we know, is a really neat pocket dimension that allows people to connect and for very weird places and people to swap items. You know how awesome it would be to just have an insane adventure in the crawl space, where the Bizarre Bazaar comes to it, the night market from the Boiling Isles comes on in? Holy cow! Like, there's just so much you could do with that particular idea. And it doesn't even need to be one that weighs heavily on the canon of the other shows even. This one could just be a ridiculous movie of hijinks and shenanigans of three stories crossing in one of the weirdest, craziest, potentially most bizarre places that any of these creators have come up with. Now, all of these ideas that I have kicked out there are fine and great, and you know what? On our Twitter, we're going to be dropping a whole lot more of these ideas that could really promote a crossover, but we need to take a step back. And we need to ask ourselves, okay, well, even though all of the canon material exists and there are canon connections that merge all three shows, what is the likeliness of this even happening? Just because Matt Brawley's all geared up and ready to go, and even though Disney stands to make a ton of money from doing this, there is no guarantee that this crossover event will happen. And as much as it pains me to say that, let me repeat, there is no guarantee that this crossover event will actually happen. First, let's go over the obstacles that exist that might prevent this crossover event from happening, and then we can have a look at what we can do to make it happen. So first, let's consider this. Disney is notorious for not respecting their animated television division. They completely underfund and underutilize them. This has been a pattern for nearly 2 decades. Plus, they make tons of bad decisions regarding their properties, either heavily censoring them to its detriment, or giving them bad airing times, or leaking information in episodes that make it easier for people to take advantage of Disney TV and rob them of profit. And they just have bad leadership. So yeah, Disney really needs to clean house in order to make this happen. Then there's Alex Hirsch. This guy is a prickly subject for Disney. He brought them so many eyeballs and so much popularity as the leader of Gravity Falls, and he absolutely transformed Disney's animation and storytelling. However, the higher-ups hated his style and dark storytelling. Disney has always wanted the success of Gravity Falls without actually having Gravity Falls, and even when they got it with the DuckTales, they still axed it out of nowhere. But coming back to Alex Hirsch, he made it very public, especially on the 10-year anniversary of Gravity Falls premiering, how much he despised working with the House of Mouse. And Mickey doesn't forget or forgive unless you can pack his trousers full of cold, hard cash. We then have Dana's Owl House. This show is a ton of fun and has brought so many people back to Disney. But because Disney Television veers away from everything too similar to Gravity Falls, they axed the full 3rd season, promised and greenlit for the Owl House, and forced Dana to wrap up everything earlier than she wanted. And you can see it on her face in recent events that this woman is heartbroken. Disney has betrayed her. What would ever make her then want to come back and work on something like this? So with the way Disney treats its creators, mismanages its properties, and makes lives miserable behind the scenes, it honestly seems impossible that a great idea like this epic cartoon crossover would ever see the light of day. Well, this is where Matt Brawley comes in, and you, yes, you, dear viewer, this is where we all come into play. Matt has been the champion of this crossover idea for more than a year now, and probably for far longer. He's pushed through the crossover panel at Comic-Con, and he's thrown the idea out there to the rest of the world for us to act on. And he is Disney Television's Wonder Boy. Consider this for a moment. At Matt's behest and complaint, Disney did something they've never done before, and I repeat, never truly done before. Pull down all copies of True Colors after it premiered too early and linked to general audiences. Disney has never cared before about what happens to its properties, but the company likes Matt. He's a team player and has a very cheery attitude despite everything Mickey throws at him. And he has been working with them for a long time, building up all kinds of valuable connections. And he has used that position in order to get things done that he wanted to get done, such as recalling True Colors to give it a proper release. So from his position and with his influence, he does stand ready to make this crossover happen. But it requires strong support from all the fans for all three shows, which will be a clear indicator that Disney can profit from a massive crossover event. So this is where all of us come into play. Here's what we can do. First, binge watch all of these shows on Disney Plus or on other Disney sites. Watch all of Amphibia, rewatch all of The Owl House, rewatch all of Gravity Falls. Boost them up on media. Show Disney those numbers. Number 2, pepper Disney with requests for official merchandise for these three shows. Gravity Falls already got it done, and man, they sold out. Now then, the same thing can happen with Amphibia and the Owl House merchandise, especially with the Owl House merchandise. Disney just needs to be convinced that the fans want that merchandise and that it will make them money. Number 3, and this does feel a little bit selfish on my part right here, but here it is. This is the third thing that we can do. Please share this video, and please share other ones like it. Boost it. Because Disney does pay attention to stuff like this. They have an entire department dedicated to combing the internet for what people are saying about them and their properties. If it can be seen across the entire internet that there is a massive movement of fans who want to see these shows continued and especially have a crossover, Disney will take notice. And again, if they can see that there's money in it for them, they will make this happen. Number 4. Do not let up. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Continue to let Disney know repeatedly that what we want is we want more of these shows and that we want this crossover to happen. For our parts, for Camille's Harem, on our official Twitter, we are going to post an advocacy for this cartoon crossover event every day for an entire year. And honestly, it's going to be awesome. Not only am I going to post up some neat ideas and pictures, but I'm really going to try to advocate for why this is a great idea and why Disney should be paying attention. And the more of us that do this, they will take notice. This will be a long battle, but it can be won. Disney can be made to see that they only have to gain by changing their ways and allowing this crossover event to happen. And I have real faith in this approach and in Matt's ability to pull off miracles. Furthermore, he will do whatever is necessary to help bring Alex and Dana back on board, and together these three will be an unstoppable force. Finally, let's get to the last part. What can we as novice authors gain by looking at the confirmed connected cartoon universe? There's actually quite a lot. My first lesson is this. When you write your stories with your friends, and you think about how cool it would be to merge or cross over your stories, there is one thing that you must do above all others. Make your story the best it can be. Seriously, focus first and foremost on your own tale. Gravity Falls, Amphibia, and The Owl House have all focused primarily and secondarily on their own stories, making them the absolute best that they could possibly be. A good, strong story is one that deserves to continue on and will draw people in. Second lesson, and it is strongly linked with the first one, make the world building you have solid. The way your story operates must make sense, even if it is over-the-top fantasy and science fiction, because within those concrete rules, you can find precise and believable ways to open up possibilities for your own connected universe with your friends and their stories. Our third lesson: stay in contact with your friends. Be active in helping them make the best of their stories, and let them help you. By having a strong cycle of help and feedback, you will not only vastly improve your own storytelling, but you will then have a wonderful network of support, and you will be able to then work together to create the proper Easter eggs and crossover experiences in order then to capitalize on those later and then have your great crossover events. My fourth lesson is this: figure out where to best have your crossover. By communicating with your friends, you can find out where a crossover event will work best, whether that be as a side, unrelated story, or as something very profitable to your overall tale. And once you have then decided, well, if it's going to work or not, you can then decide where you're going to put it. Are you going to put it at the end after everything has happened, so that way it's just kind of like a neat continuation? Or are you going to have your crossover in the middle, which is going to be kind of like this cool moment where your heroes are able to learn something from characters from absolutely different places? Or is it going to happen at the beginning of your story and be the inciting incident that kicks off all of your characters' adventures? I mean, if we think about it right here, if we look at Alex, Dana, and Matt, and they've been doing all of their crossovers and their little teases for crossovers already, all of their crossover moments have been all over the place within their stories. It is possible to do a crossover event really anywhere within your story, so long as you properly set it up. My final lesson is this: your crossover should never be allowed to break your world building or drastically change your character arcs. A crossover works best when it complements everything you have already set into motion or plan to set into motion. If the different characters and intersecting storylines do not elevate each other, it will feel like a massive car crash and a pile-up that's just horrifying to read or watch. You will alienate your audience unless you can clearly see where the characters and the worlds that they've so loved and respected can properly intersect in meaningful ways. The fact that they now interact with each other might be really amazing and whatnot, but it needs to be rewarding and amazing. And once again, that takes a lot of work to make sure that that happens. It's surprising, honestly, to me, how much we can learn from just looking at the potential for a wider crossover between different stories. It can really help us understand what we need to do to just make our stories better overall, but really how we can honestly manage this really neat idea of between friends and co-authors, or people are just writing in a group. What would happen if we merged all of our stories together? There really is a lot that we can learn, and I personally think that if Disney gives the shows the green light to merge the streams, we could see Gravity Falls, The Owl House, and Amphibia step onto an even grander stage than anything they've done before and do something incredible with their already amazing and vibrant characters and unique worlds. So Disney, I hope you're listening. Do not let this golden opportunity pass you by. And well, there you have it. The connected cartoon universe is confirmed. It can get even bigger and better than what I've outlined here, but it will require that we as fans continue to support these shows. Again, please like and comment on this video here. Please share it around and support this idea with all other kinds of videos or really anything else that you can come up with. And please, feel free to join us on social media to boost the connected cartoon universe. If you have a Twitter account, please join forces with us and just be a part of our year-long campaign to let Disney know that we want this crossover event to happen. But if you're just here for a fun video and writing advice, thank you for watching and enjoying the journey with us. We have more awesome videos here that you can check out, and we've got way more coming down the pipeline. And you can also listen to the whole harem just discuss amazing things in our journey to become better writers. You can listen to us there on our podcast, Camille's Harem, found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. We have writing exercises for all you novice authors out there over at our Pinterest page, and we would love for you to join our growing community of authors. Links for all of that and more are down in the description. Thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.
Well, I learned nothing.